Hi there, it's Joe Ty from Values Coach, and welcome to this, our fourth webinar in the series on cultural blueprinting. And today we're going to talk about fostering an emotionally positive workplace environment. And I'm going to share with you a very practical, very powerful, and a lot of fun technique that you can use to do this, to create a more positive workplace environment. But first, just to illustrate what the challenge is going to be, imagine this. You come into an airport waiting area, and there are only 3 people in there, and one of them is really weird. Tell me which one is weird. The first guy, evidently having overdosed on lattes and Cinnabons or alcohol, is now conked out asleep in the chair, and the other 2 people are over by the wall doing push-ups. In our world today, which people are considered weird? And it's going to be the ones doing push-ups. And tell me, what's wrong with this picture? Anytime you do something to stand out, anytime you do something for self-improvement, anytime you do something to make the world a better place, some people are going to look at you as if you're weird. Anytime that you take the basket off your candle and try to be more passionate, more enthusiastic, run the risk that you might get it wrong and have people laugh at you, people are going to think you're weird, and you have to be willing to go through that. You have to be willing to not worry about what other people think of you. And remember this, you will worry a lot less about what other people think of you if you will admit to yourself how infrequently other people think of you, and do what it takes to create that more positive workplace environment. So many people today have Dilbert disease. You know, the cartoon strip Dilbert, where everybody is always out to lunch all day long. This is the epidemic of America. You see, Dilbert hates his boss. He can't stand the people he works with. He spends most of his time trying to be not given any real work to do. And yet his biggest fear is the fear of losing the job that he hates. If that's not neurotic, you tell me what is, and that is the epidemic disease of America. I took this picture a month or so ago at the Atlanta airport. Southwest Airlines advertisement, all airline employees have attitudes. Ours just have the good kind, and there's a picture of a Southwest flight attendant. Now, tell me, if United Airlines tried to run that ad, what would be the reaction of United's passengers, of their employees, if they were to see that? I mentioned this once in a presentation I was doing, and somebody from the audience yelled out they'd paint mustaches on the employee. And that's probably true. Tell me, in your organization, if your organization ran ads like this, all employees have attitudes, ours have the good kind, what would your reaction be? What would your coworkers, what would your customers, or in healthcare, your patients, what would they say if they saw that ad? Would they agree with it, or would they think it was the height of hypocrisy? You see, when it comes to what it's like to work in a workplace, in an organization, what it's like to be served by, treated by an organization, attitude really is everything. People may or may not know if you're doing a good job technically, but they do know the attitude with which you approach your work. And in a world where, according to Gallup and Press Ganey and everybody who studies employee engagement, 1 out of 4 people are highly engaged in the work, which means 75%, 3 out of 4 people are not. Having a highly enthusiastic, highly engaged, passionate workforce gives you an incredible source of competitive advantage. And we see it over and over in companies like Costco, Southwest Airlines, Zappos, where people come to work every day with their A game, a smile on their face. They have fun at work, and they create incredible and sustainable competitive advantage for their organizations. And more than that, whether or not you have a positive attitude is a choice. It's a great example from a movie, Cool Hand Luke, one of Paul Newman's greatest roles. You know, Luke has been arrested. He's out there on the chain gang with Boss Man with the mirrored sunglasses, and they're working on this road, and Boss Man keeps saying, "Hurry up, boys, get this road done." And they're grunting and straining and sweating, and nobody's having fun. And finally, Luke says, "Boss Man wants speed, boys. Come on, let's give him some speed." He hollers out, "Hee-yah!" And he starts shoveling like crazy. And the other guys say, "Come on, let's try to keep up with Luke." And pretty soon, they're shoveling like mad, and they get the road done 2 hours early. And they're laughing and having a good time, resting in the sun because there's nothing left for them to do. Tell me, what changed? The work did not change. In fact, the work got harder because they were working harder. The one and only thing that changed the job from drudgery, another day, another dollar, work sucks, then you die, to a game, to a challenge, to something that was fun, was the attitude with which they approached the work. And imagine if every single worker in America could make that switch, that mind shift from another day, another dollar to every day I'm bringing my passion, my enthusiasm, my joy to work. How different would it be? Now remember, in previous webinars, I have emphasized this point. We're talking about changing culture, creating a more positive culture, but culture does not change unless and until people change. Because what culture really is, it is the collective attitudes and behaviors and the habits that people bring to work. And if nobody changes any of those things, you can have a program of the month, but pretty soon people are wearing the happy face pin upside down and they're parroting the script in a monotone, and it's just been another program of the month, unless people make changes at a personal level. And that's really what leadership is all about. James McGregor Burns wrote a book, Leadership. It won the Pulitzer Prize. And he talked about two kinds of leadership. Transactional leadership, that's running the business, paying the bills, getting product out the door, management. The other kind of leadership he talked about was transformational leadership. That is actually changing people, raising people to a higher level of values, of personal standards of performance, of personal expectations, helping people be more engaged, more enthusiastic, more positive. Those things are transformational leadership. And that's really the kind of leadership that we're talking about with this program. And over time, the attitude in your workplace will be determined by what you expect, job descriptions, a new employee orientation, the plaque on the wall, and what you tolerate. And over time, what you tolerate will dominate what you say you expect. You say, we expect integrity, but your culture tolerates two people talking about a coworker behind that person's back, and you have just lowered the bar on what integrity really means. One toxic negative person can drag down morale and productivity of an entire work unit the way one person lighting a cigarette in a room instantly pollutes the lungs of everybody else in that room. And it is a leadership obligation to create the kind of workplace where you do not let that happen, where you become more and more intolerant of toxic emotional negativity. Now, we have talked about this construct, this metaphor we use for the invisible architecture of your organization, where the foundation is core values, the superstructure is culture, the personality, the character of the organization, and interior finish is attitude in the workplace. And today we're talking about attitude, but let's go back for a minute and review the foundation of core values. See, it's organizational values define strategies, but personal values define culture. And in the best organizations, they understand that and they show a link between the two. And let's look at a couple of examples, because your statement of core values should create attitude and behavior expectations. It defines who you are, what you stand for, and what you won't stand for. One of my very favorites, high-tech company in Iowa, Integrated DNA Technologies, one of their core values says, be yourself, unless you're a jerk. And in 6 words, they capture that. Who you are, what you stand for, what you won't stand for. We want you to be authentic. Bring your best self to work every day. Don't pretend to be somebody else trying to impress us, because you won't. Be a team player. Treat other people with respect. And leave your crummy jerk attitudes out in the parking lot. Don't bring them in here. All that in 6 words. They establish a pretty clear expectation. High-tech company called AWeber. One of their core values, don't take ourselves too seriously and have fun. That, again, they create an expectation about what our attitude is. Clickstop, an online retail company, one of their 6 core values, expect greatness in yourself and inspire it in others. And that is a statement of attitudinal expectation. Zappos, create fun and a little weirdness. What kind of attitude does it take to have that sort of a value, that sort of an approach to your work? Cypress Semiconductor. I would not be happy working in a company where one of their core values is we are about winning and we do not tolerate losing. But they are very clear about who they are, about what they stand for, winning, and about what they will not stand for, losing. And they almost never make hiring mistakes, because who would apply for a job at a company that's that clear about what they expect and who they are if they didn't have that sort of competitive winning spirit and attitude? Warby Parker, the company that sells discount eyeglasses and then gives a pair to somebody in need for every one they sell. Create an environment where employees can think big, have fun, and do good. And again, that's a very powerful, very clear statement about what they expect of the attitude that you're going to bring to work. Your values should also establish and communicate and help you enforce your zero tolerance behaviors and low tolerance behaviors. And let's look at those two. Zero tolerance. Your organization should have a zero tolerance for bullying and other forms of what's called lateral violence, of dishonesty, sexual harassment, rumor mongering. I mean, that violates integrity to talk about a coworker behind that person's back. And profanity. And this one's a little more difficult. We're unfortunately getting much more lax in our use of language. But in the workplace, you should have a high expectation of professional behavior. Low tolerance. You should have minimal tolerance for whining, complaining, moaning, passive-aggressive resistance to progress, people being sarcastic, belittling other people, passing the blame, pointing fingers, not accepting responsibility. Those behaviors, those attitudes should come with consequences if you want to create a more positive culture. So let's shift gears and talk about this movement that we are working to spark at Values Coach, and we hope you'll join us, to eradicate toxic emotional negativity in the workplace. You see, this should be a disease category, TEN, toxic emotional negativity. It is the emotional and spiritual equivalent of toxic cigarette smoke. It is malignant. It is harmful to the person who has negative attitudes. Lots of research shows that people with negative attitudes, they're sicker, they don't live as long, their careers aren't as good, and it's contagious. Bad attitudes are as contagious as flu bug in a kindergarten class. And that's why we need to be so tough about eradicating it. And unfortunately, it's a serious problem. Our research at Values Coach corroborates what many other research organizations are finding. We, for example, we do a culture assessment survey, and I recently collected results from 15 hospital and healthcare organizations, more than 6,000 responses, and we're way over that now. And the results are pretty consistent. For the question that says, our people reflect positive attitudes, treat others with respect, and do not complain, gossip, or point fingers, more people disagree than agree with that statement. And that is a serious problem. And we also, with our clients, when we do a culture assessment survey, we calculate how much are you paying people to bitch, moan, whine, complain, and gossip. And the numbers are appalling. They range from hundreds of thousands of dollars to smaller organizations, say 200 or 300 employees, to tens of millions of dollars for mid-sized organizations, say 5 to 10,000 employees, and hundreds of millions of dollars for big corporations or multi-institutional healthcare systems with tens of thousands of employees. And that does not account for the effect on productivity, on customer satisfaction or patient satisfaction, on employee morale. That is simply the amount of money you're paying people to be non-productive at work because they're bitching, moaning, whining, complaining, and gossiping instead of doing the work that you've paid them to do. And so we're sharing with people this incredible promise, the pickle pledge. I will turn every complaint into either a blessing or a constructive suggestion. And we'll get to the footnote in a minute here. But this is a promise that you make to yourself and that you make to the people you live with at home and you work with, that you will turn complaints into blessings or constructive suggestions. And there is literally nothing you can complain about that you cannot find a blessing in it. My head is killing me. Thank God for modern pharmacology. Or a constructive suggestion. My head is killing me. I should drink some water since the first symptom of dehydration is a headache. And this pickle pledge comes with footnote that I mentioned. By taking this promise, I am promising myself that I will no longer waste my time, my energy, my life on blaming, complaining, and gossiping, nor will I commiserate with those who steal my energy, and that truly is a theft of energy, when other people blame, complain, and gossip around you. Just don't be a part of it. And this is such a great metaphor. We use this pickle metaphor because people who are always whining and complaining, at least metaphorically, look like they've been sucking on a dill pickle. And what is a pickle? Well, it's a fresh vegetable that has been soaked in vinegar. And isn't that what it feels like to be around these toxic, negative people who are always whining and complaining like they've been soaked in vinegar? And so we are doing something exciting, something new. We call it the Pickle Challenge for Charity, where we challenge people every time you catch yourself or you catch somebody else bitching, moaning, whining, complaining, gossiping. You put a quarter in a pickle jar and you count them all up during a 1-week period. You set yourself a goal and donate that money to charity. And for our clients, we actually match the first $500 or $1,000 and make a donation to that charity as well. It is absolutely amazing and appalling how fast you see the quarters pile up when people do this in good faith. And people will say, are we really that negative? And the truth is, well, you probably didn't even catch them all. Last year in 2015, Values Coach paid out more than $10,000 in matching donations. That means $40,000 at a quarter apiece, 40,000 times in a 1-week period in just 12 organizations. People stopped themselves and said, oh, there I go again, put a quarter in the jar. And that is an incredible awareness-raising activity. And this challenge is literally taking on a life of its own. We are seeing singing pickles, dancing pickles, hula pickles, pickle piñatas, pickle parties, people declaring their workspace a pickle-free zone. I don't want to hear your complaining and gossiping and criticizing. Take it to someone else. This is a pickle-free zone at Kalispell Regional Healthcare. This is the Iowa Veterans Home where they've declared it a pickle-free zone. This is Grinnell Regional Medical Center where they actually put Penelope Pickle up there to declare it a pickle-free zone. It's a hospital in Bryan, Ohio, community hospitals and health centers. I will turn every complaint into either a blessing or a constructive suggestion. Star Valley Medical Center in Wyoming, one of the top 20 critical access hospitals in America, and they gather every day and they do the pickle pledge and then that day's promise from the self-empowerment pledge as a group. We're seeing people do fun things like cake decorating contests, pickle jar decorating contests. Some of my favorites are from community hospitals and wellness centers in Bryan, Ohio, where each department did one that reflected their department. This is the housekeeping department, Oscar the Grouch climbing out of a garbage can. This is the lab, their information technology department, maintenance, the fixer-uppers, rehabilitation, the pickle jar with the walker. One caveat, if you take this to heart, if you're serious about it, you're going to get resistance. And as you might expect, the most vocal and vociferous resistance will come from the people who are already the most negative, and paradoxically, the ones who could personally benefit the most from taking it to heart. And not just them, not just themselves being happier and healthier and more successful, but their families at home when they would come home at the end of the day with a more positive and less negative outlook on life. Now, does this stuff work? Sure, absolutely. Let me give you an example. Midland Memorial Hospital in West Texas. We've been working with them for over 3 years now. They built this gorgeous brand new hospital building, $176 million project, one of the most beautiful hospitals I've ever seen. And in the year after they opened it, patient satisfaction went down. Why? Because they created these very high expectations with this beautiful new building, and then they moved in the same old culture, the same old attitudes and habits and treating people. And the gap between new and higher expectations and the reality of the same old treatment got even wider, and patients registered that in lower patient satisfaction. And so we did the pickle challenge, and they had a pickle jar decorating contest. These are some of my favorite entries. This is the one from housekeeping where they dressed up a pickle jar like a housekeeper. They had pickle eating contests in the cafeteria. They had pickle cupcakes in the cafeteria. Their HR department painted their entire 25-foot glass wall with the pickle pledge to remind people, whatever you're coming in to do, apply for a job, file a grievance or whatever, don't come in here to whine and complain. Let's talk about how great it is to work here and find suggestions for the problems that we're dealing with. When their accreditation surveyors came through, All three of them, the physician, the nurse, and the administrator, commented on how much more positive the culture was. All three of them commented on the pickle jars full of quarters. And the nurse surveyor said the highlight of my entire week here was when I heard a nurse say to a doctor, "Doc, you're being a pickle. Put a quarter in the jar." And he did. A member of their respiratory therapy department found a tree that had fallen down in a storm, 2,000-pound tree trunk. He took it to his shop and turned it into this guy, this pickle chainsaw carving, which now greets everybody who comes through the employee entrance of that hospital. And it has actually become a tourist attraction. People are gathering. They'll just stop by and get their pictures taken, send it home, send it to friends. New employees, after new employee orientation, will come. These are the values trainers after our class, teaching them how to teach our course on the 12 core action values. When kids come through in class sessions, they all want to get their picture taken with the big pickle. Here's been the impact. We started out with a survey at Midland Memorial Hospital. We did the culture assessment survey in February and then again in August. In August, 63% of respondents said that my coworkers are more positive and fully engaged than they were in the April sessions when we launched this challenge. This is even more impressive. Almost 9 out of 10 agreed with the statement that I am more aware of my attitudes and the attitudes of people around me, and I'm more fully engaged in my work than I was before we started this. The question, we refrain from toxic emotional negativity. In February, when we did the survey, only 36% agreed, and almost nobody strongly agreed. In August, several months after the April challenge started, that number had almost doubled. People agreeing that we don't engage in toxic emotional negativity, and the number who disagree is way low. Hours wasted on toxic emotional negativity cut in half in less than a year. The economic impact on the hospital in direct salary, more than $7 million, is the cultural productivity benefit of those hours being shifted from whining and complaining to positive, constructive work, to communicating with other people, to investing in their own personal development. And by the way, at the beginning of the year when we started in February, their patient satisfaction was the lowest it had ever been. And by the end of the year, it was breaking all-time record highs. And we were seeing improvements in everything else, productivity, quality indicators, everything, all based on getting people to have a more positive attitude in work. And it reflected in a 21 percentage point increase in the number of people agreeing with the statement that I have great pride, my coworkers have great pride in being a part of this organization. So when I'm sharing this Pickle Pledge and the Pickle Challenge for charity with audiences, I'll often ask two questions. Question number one, if you personally took the Pickle Pledge to heart, would you be a better person? Would you be better off than where you're headed now, personally, professionally, financially, even in your spiritual life? Question number two, if everyone where you work made a good faith effort to take that promise, turning complaints into blessings, would you do a better job of serving customers, serving patients, of supporting each other? And of course, the answer is always a very emphatic yes, absolutely. How could it not be? And so the obvious next question is, why don't you do it? Why wouldn't you, where you work, make a collective commitment to the Pickle Pledge and to promote a more positive and productive organization? Oh, and by the way, everybody, without exception, who engages in it, who embraces this, is also going to be more happy at home in their personal life. That's just flat out guarantee. And their families are going to notice, hey, what's going on with mom? What's going on with dad? What's going on with my spouse? What are they up to? Why are they smiling all the time? All you need to make this go is a few brave souls bring in a pickle jar. Hang a sign on their door, and you can get Pickle Pledge, Pickle Free Zone door hangers from the Spark Store website. And refuse to be a part of toxic emotional negativity, to not bitch, moan, whine, complain, to not talk about people behind their back, to have a smile on your face every day. And you as a manager, you as a leader, you as a friend need to stand by the people when the pickle suckers, when the emotional vampires criticize, when they make fun, when they talk about how, this is kindergarten stuff. You need to say, well, maybe that's what we need around here, is a little bit more fun. So join the movement. Take the pickle pledge to heart yourself. Put a pickle jar on your desk and or wherever you work. Put one at home and start putting quarters in every time you catch yourself whining and complaining. Declare your workspace a PFZ, a pickle-free zone. And set a positive example by being a spark plug yourself. Now, let me wrap up with this. I know what you're thinking, some of you. That could never happen. It's impossible. Let me remind you, at one time, not only did people smoke on airplanes, but the airline industry advertised an airplane as a place for you to smoke. When Dr. C. Everett Koop, one of the great American heroes, said we're going to have a smoke-free society back in 1986, everybody wondered what he was smoking. Back then, people smoked everywhere, even on airplanes. And today, if somebody lit a cigarette in any public place, people would throw water on them. They'd be put out. They'd be thrown out, thrown out of the airplane at 30,000 feet. We think of the miraculous culture change that has been brought about in a drug that is addictive and that had an evil industry spending hundreds of millions of dollars promoting. If I could wave a magic wand over your community, over your organization, over your household, and for 90 days, for 60 days, for 30 days, there would be no bitching, moaning, whining, complaining, gossiping, no TEN, no toxic emotional negativity. You would never go back the way we will never again allow anybody to pollute the air that we breathe, that our children breathe, with their toxic cigarette smoke. One last thing. The other thing that we have done with many of our clients, including our Midland Memorial Hospital, is the Self-Empowerment Pledge and the course on Pledge Power. And this is not the place for us to go through this. I know many of you have seen the laminated card that's in the book, The Florence Prescription. Call our office if you haven't, we'll send you one. But it's one promise for each day of the week. And these are promises that you make to yourself. And in groups, people make it to each other. And we are seeing people make amazing changes in their workplace and their lives. This is the Culture of Ownership training room at Midland Memorial Hospital, where they actually had a professional artist cover one wall with the Self-Empowerment Pledge, and every new employee goes through it. Every single day in their main lobby of the hospital at 8:16 a.m., nearly 100 people gather for the daily huddle, and one of the things they do as a group is they repeat out loud as a group the pickle pledge, including the footnote, and the Self-Empowerment Pledge promise for the day. And I have been there and I have watched, and if you look around, most of the people there aren't reading it. They know the pickle pledge, including footnote, by heart. They know each one of the 7 promises of the Self-Empowerment Pledge by heart. And we are hearing incredible stories from people who have quit smoking, lost weight, finally started writing the book that they've been putting off, going back to graduate school. In fact, if you pick up the Chicken Soup for the Soul book, the most recent one, Inspiration for Nurses, Bob Dent, who's pictured here, wrote a story about a registered nurse who used the Self-Empowerment Pledge to break a long-standing and tenacious addiction to narcotics. And the word he used to describe the change he had made in his life because of this promise was miracle. We are seeing people gather and wear their wristbands every day. All these people have Thursday's promise for contribution, and they're wearing the wristband. And just putting that wristband on every day and giving it a pop every time you remember the promise, you will begin to change your habits. You will begin to become a more positive, more self-empowered person. And as you do that, you'll start changing your habits. You'll start getting different and better outcomes. And then it will become a part of your own personal DNA. So you can find out more about the Pledge Power course by going to pledgepower.com. Make sure when you're there to click on the tab that says Course Outline and take a look at that detailed course outline. Now, let me wrap up with this. If you want to learn more about the Pickle Challenge, the Pickle Challenge for Charity, or the Pledge Power course on the Self-Empowerment Pledge, just give our office a call. Michelle Arduzer would be happy to talk with you. Our number is 319-624-3889. Or you can send either of us an email, michelle@valuescoach.com, or me, joe@valuescoach.com, and we'd be happy to talk with you. So let me wrap up. Get that pickle out of your mouth, put a smile on your face, have a positive attitude. If enough of us did that, think of the world we could create. think of how much better everything would be. Thanks much. Thanks for listening. See you later.